It is crazy to think 10 years ago, the world was graced by Press and Garvey demanding we save another settlement. Also turning 10 includes Undertale, The Witcher 3, Bloodborne, Rocket League, Metal Gear Solid 5, the last new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game, and I'm still sad and angry by that, and a few others. Suddenly there was a massive influx of gray hairs. So I guess time to venture forth to the Commonwealth once again, but how should I suffer this time around? One of the central mechanics heavily pressed by Todd Howard, which includes the famous line,
"It just works,"
is the settlement and crafting features. So to appease our Lord and Savior, I shall conquer this masterpiece as he intended, as today, I shall attempt to beat Fallout 4 with only crafted items. Rules are going to be straightforward. The only items I can use are items I have crafted. Going to be somewhat loose with the definition, but basically, I will need to craft the items at a crafting station or a manufacturer from the settlement workshop. Weapons, armors, healing, etc., they will all need to be crafted, but I'll keep the vault suit on, just so I don't have to stare at tidy-whities all run. I am free to loot to my heart's content for scrapping or selling for more components, so this will basically devolve into a casual playthrough. Well, to spice things up, for my bonus objectives, I will need to recruit every base game settlement to the cause, which is where half of the run will come from. I am not going to allow myself to shotgun diplomacy unless necessary, and because it is an achievement in Todd Howard's eyes, I will have to get benevolent leader at some point. That will be more of an afterthought. Well, I have a lot ahead of me, so how much bullshit can I get away with before I get the prompt that everyone disliked that? Let's find out. I started out the game as a good boy from the very beginning to relive the intro, and of course since this is a Bethesda game, I have to make my character monstrosity. Well, as much as the game would let me. I never cared for the Fallout character creators. I just casually peruse my house of any essentials, anything to bleed time until the door-to-door salesman can influence me on a timeshare in a totally shady location. As for special stats, I focus on the special stats to get me all the crafting abilities, along with endurance I can take a hit. I play with my infancy to pretend I am not going to be a father who is going to the grocery store for smokes and milk. It's all getting blown to smithereens anyways. I just follow my good little map marker, being an absolute prick closing the doors behind me. No doctor, you shall not give me a lobotomy. I take a quick chill out, have to keep calm as my wife develops a mild headache, and now I can begin my escape out of the vault. I loot everything that I can get my grubby hands on, making sure not to cause any harm to my insectoid friends, including leading them through the bug zapper. This stuff is mostly for selling. I have been through this vault numerous times before, just have to close the door on the roaches, crouch in a corner in cowardice, and then I can pick up my Pip-Boy. Then I can make it out to the real world. My first priority is of course heading down to my sanctuary and making it my own. Of course, before I can engage in combat, I have my local gardener slice up the insectoids and bumping up my charisma. Also, can I get an F in the chat for Sean and my wife? I interacted with the red tool bench to Destiny, Todd's magnum opus, and scrapped everything I can get my hands onto. I'm going to need as much materials as I can get. Also, not going to bore you on some details, the scrap store duplication glitched often. I first modified my 10mm gun, since the role I started out with, not knowing the details on the fabricators, I had to modify my equipment before I could use them. It was a weird arbitrary rule, which wouldn't last. Then again, most runs I do, I just fly by the seat of my pants. Also, if anyone is wondering, the chem station is behind the yellow house to the south. This bench will be my crux for the early game. It lets me craft my drugs, healing supplies, caltraps if I'm feeling like being an absolute sadist, and the most important thing, Molotovs. This is going to be my primary weapon for the early game. Also, I repeatedly hang the same sign over and over to hide my drug stash for a level up. And feeling ready for a hellish time, I set out to begin reconquering the wasteland. My first stop is the Red Rocket to recruit it to the cause. 1 down, 30 to go. I neglect my dog, letting him starve out in the cold, then wander my way past Concord. Much like the game with the same name, I don't last very long before I'm discarded, and I talk to your favorite anime waifu for selling. I sell any junk I don't need for more materials to craft with. Just know, all my funds in this playthrough shall go towards crafting materials. I also light up Wolfgang, and the one Molotov was not enough to come out on top. They died in each other's arms. How cute. I sold more junk I didn't need to Trudy, then returned to Sanctuary to continue my crafty adventures. I also modified some armors I found so I can wear them, sort of violating rules, but the rules won't last very long. More pretty soon. Once I stash as much booze as I can down my pants so I look like a creep, I figure I am more than ready to save the legend. Of course, by doing absolutely nothing to conserve on my ammo, only firing should the need arise. Inside the museum, I rush through only firing when I can get a kill. Once the raiders were dealt with, I met with the living legend, then exited the museum from the front entrance. Contrary to map markers, you don't need to grab the power armor. I played things safe, and instead of engaging the enemies head-on, I snuck around the backside and let the Deathclaw have his fun. Judging by the altitude that they were getting thrown, I think it's having the time of its life. Once the raiders were dealt with, the skink tried coming after me, but I can always hide in the building of safety, popping Molotovs where I can. I eventually ran out of them, and the lizard was kind enough to let me sneak away from town to craft some more. I just had to be patient with my hurls, and eventually by playing like an absolute coward, the non-Bethesda way, the Komodo could be slain, and I lead the refugees to Sanctuary and be tasked by Preston to save the settlements, beginning the infamous gameplay loop. But before attending to the people's needs, I think it is time I bring out my trump card that shall ease the game. Water is very funny. Just ask Fallout 3. The industrial water generator generates a lot of water which is deposited into the workbench. Since I have to craft this manufacturer, I am free to use bottled water to my heart's content. You can generate lots of water if you set up a water empire, and sells for a tidy profit. Basically, this will take away any financial stress from my crafting needs, and this becomes my focus for much of the remainder of the first act, becoming a screwball, selling my worldly possessions you can find at the hardware store. But this is the Fallout series. Screws are a luxury item, only afforded to the elite corporations because, oh boy, they love screwing you over. Up the ass, no first dates, and taking your wallet in the meantime. And in search of screws, I ventured forth from the safety of my nest and towards Diamond City. I am naked and afraid in this hostile world, so I took things slow heading towards the big city. I came across the police station, and wanting to prove I am not afraid, I hid in a corner behind some fences cowering in fear of the zombies. Dan's is so overpowered, I don't have to worry. He invites me inside of the station to loot him of every worldly possession like the good Samaritan I am. This run is going to be one giant resource sink, also I can monopolize the entire crafting industry. I will take it. When I returned to Sanctuary, I began setting up my ammunition forge, and at this point, I learned you can craft weapons, armors, useless fireworks, and nearly anything your heart desires, except for the stuff that actually matters. It skips the middleman, and lets you craft items without experience. By hooking up a computer, you can demand what items you want, and if you have all the required components, it will spit stuff out. It isn't guaranteed what items come out, it's a gotcha, and you pray that you get what you want, but you won't be able to get any legendary items. Those require your credit card, last 3 digits on the back of that card, your social security number, and a small loan from a bank to feed your gambling addiction that isn't banned for anyone under 21. The only crappy part is that the game will not print out any helmets, so my perfect head is ripe for a headshot. After ditching Dance for a copious amount of time, I return to the date and we ride off towards Arcjet. I am a shoot first, ask questions later sort of guy. Probably did more harm than good. As for Arcjet, this place plays out as it normally does. Since this is still the early game, I want my experience and I want my money. It is the currency that makes the world go round. That is why coins are in the shape of the earth, minus the whole earth is slightly oblong sort of thing. Dance does the heavy lifting, I just enjoy the splendors of raking in the caps later. I need to do my taxes, and totally not cheat on them since my tax accountant is absolutely based. So I let the robot play with his buddies. Once I had my fill of cinema, I pressed the big red button, fired everyone to not have to deal with unemployment for the layoffs coming soon, and looted every cubicle for anything to pawn off. I let Dance do the heavy lifting once again, while I reaped the spoils and spent a long time searching for the synth with the transmitter. The battle was bloody, and afterwards, I am inducted into the Brotherhood of Steel. Well yeah, this is a part of my early game route. I will need to join the Brotherhood for a settlement later, so it all works out. And needing to pawn off my haul, I just ventured my way towards Green Tech, stopping by my favorite vendor that is actually overpowered as hell, but I won't be needing any of his wares today. Probably should do another Suggs weapon run at some point. I wandered my way towards Diamond City afterwards, and for a second, I thought I could help with the Super Mutant camp, but given I can't use any legendary items this run, an unintended restriction, I just left them to their problems. I nudged Piper into letting me into the city, and when I was done waiting for the shops to open, I had a funny interaction. Glad to know conversations can take place across the city. And needing some quick experience for a vendor perk, I did Piper's interview, since I have been following the story pretty closely at this point. There was a standoff outside, so I tried to fight with fire. Didn't go too well. Back at my crafting depot, with more resources from Diamond City, I got a machine factory set up to see what items I can produce. From the weapons manufacturer, I can craft a double-barreled shotgun and a 10mm pistol, which I do end up going for. As for the food processor, honestly, they all suck for the stuff you have to put in. I think I'll stick to my water war crimes, thank you very much. And for ammunition, I can craft a metric ton of 10mm. So yeah, my build is starting its metamorphosis into a general gun build. I love the smell of productivity in the morning, even if the bullets are made of Brahmin. Also, before leaving Sanctuary, I did go a little postal just so I can get a cap collector perk, which given my financial priorities, will be a major boon going forward. With a gun and more Molotovs to my name, at this point, I am finally feeling confident with my build, capable to stand my ground in this brutal world. I then venture to the south to talk to the Abernathys to get their quest started. I still have to be conservative with my ammunition for now, so for any mole rats, I just give them a good bonking. I did make a pit stop at the nearby junkyard to see what is behind the false door. The answer is a code to tell the robot this statement is false. Works every time. At the satellite array, I just use my pixel perfect accuracy to headshot the raiders from afar. Works like a charm. Sure beats whatever Vass is aiming at. Probably saw a few subscribe buttons behind her. Inside the array properly, I wanted to play things safe, and I didn't have a lot of healing to my name at this point, and I don't fancy being turned into a cheese wheel, so I just cheesed Akok with my favorite cloth and vodka mix. I can only afford the cheapest right now, so the hangovers are going to be very nasty. With Locket in hand, I left the array to continue my early Minutemen ending route to the east to 9+1 Pines, all to start the Corvega headache. Back at Sanctuary, I got my first harvest of clean drinking water, and I also crafted some stims, which will only be used to heal limb damage. And also, the Water Empire has expanded. Soon, I shall have a monopoly of the basic human need. I returned to the Abernathys and handed in the locket. Sure, another settlement under my belt, but the more important thing, I can buy Brahmin at a discount, so ammunition gets a lot easier. This is called working the supply chain to your favor. Now comes the important task of clearing out Corvega, and much like any other rational human being, I turned a short-range handgun into a sniper rifle. These raiders are still the basic variety without much protection, so honestly they weren't much a concern. As for Jared, I honestly don't know what was happening. I just snapped the raiders from afar, and when I went to duck behind cover, the entire factory exploded, and Jared was taken out. Not that I mind, it just makes the entire ordeal simple. And I really don't want to clear out the roof, so I just snuck away from the whole situation, and in my escape, I just had to sit through a boring homeowners association meeting. Sure, Jenny, it is frowned upon that my lawn is 2mm too long and my paint needs to be 1 tint lighter, and the screams from my basement from my test subjects to be a little quieter, but it's none of your f***ing business. I relayed the good news to 10 Pines Bluff that Subway lost their horrid spokesman, and I am now general for the Minutemen. Generally an asshole. And as a side note, after every dungeon or so, I do have to return to Sanctuary to resupply and craft more items, which includes going to my vendors, peddling my water at an exorbitant price because it comes from a brand name distillery, even though I just got the water from a garden hose, then sleeping for a few days for everyone's wares to be restocked and my water refilled. It gets very numbing, but all this is the price of freedom. The freedom of a free market ripe with abuse. Also my shopping trips, I gather more parts to expand my water empire to war crimes levels in third world nations. But I'm a corporation in the first world, so I don't care. I then traveled to the Starlight Drive-In and cleared it out of its mole rat infestation and came across a major roadblock. I have to pick a door to get to the workbench, which I cannot craft bobby pins. So in essence, I failed the challenge. But oh well, y'all enjoy my masochism anyways, so the show will go on. I then cleared out the car problem of the Starlight, which will be an essential location later. I told Preston the good news, and I figure at this point, I can get the main story on track. Well, before I go into Park Street Station, I make a pit stop at the library through the side entrance to get the science bobblehead, and I had some fun with the super mutants. The 10mm is starting to fall off at this point, requiring numerous bullets into the noggin to go down. At least with my backup, this wasn't too strenuous of an encounter. I do start getting legendary items, which will just be sold for more caps. For the briefest of moments, I did consider going into Park Street, but I know my bullets will be draining at an alarming rate down there, so instead, I paid a visit to Good Neighbor for more selling. It is nice being a thousandaire. With a settler at Starlight, I figure I can get started on the legendary Benevolent Leader achievement. With all the DLCs, it is stupidly easy to get now. All you need to do is craft an Olympic stable worth of pommel horses. Each provides happiness, and it is super easy to get the achievement this way. Just be sure resources are kept stable, and you're good. Ready as I can be, which is minimally, I entered Park Street Station. While these wannabe mobsters have minimal protection, they sure do have a lot of health. Or I just never invested any points into any damage perks, but I don't plan on sticking with this weapon for much longer. I just plucked away at the goons. Any that entered my line of sight got their heads popped like a sledgehammer to a melon, though one jerk managed to blast a Molotov in midair. Dickface. When I got inside the vault, the goons were gooning over the prospect of fresh meat. I am sorry, but there isn't much meat on these bones. Just full of lead I thought tasted good when I was young. Might have had some side effects. And as I was going through the vault, I realized in post that my reckless abandon and habitat looting any ammo I saw ended up invalidating the run, since I was looting the 10mm ammo I forgot the monsters carry around. I was getting drained with this run. My head is barren of any captain hats, and I am more or less forgotten. Being at the ripe old age of almost 29 tends to induce dementia. Or maybe that was the lead pacifier, I don't know. Well, Dino goes back to the Stone Age with the power of the Irony Age, and I rescued my lonely February night. Well, the main reason I came here was for the bobblehead so I can improve on my never-ending cycle of unsustainable gains, because big numbers make shareholders erect. The rest of the vault was non-eventful, and for Skinny and his gooning goons, I told Darla to dump the bimbo, and we were let go. It's okay, Skinny. You can always find a Mr. Handy to get you through the evenings. We escaped the vault, and got to working out sleuthing around the city for any clues on where the rival manufacturers are hiding. I forgot to pick the key off the mayor, so I had to resist my urges to organ harvest prisoners, and politely ask for the keys, and raided the building for any narcotics. All we found were some fancy blunts. Back in my central hub for crafting, it is another vicious cycle of crafting, and at this point, I was getting really tired of this facade. At least with my metric ton of water, I cornered the market, and continue my capitalism push. But at this point, I realized something funny. I took Gun Nut 2 at some point, and I can craft a combat shotgun. My favorite Fallout weapon. Sure, this will be the second shotgun run in a row, but given my strict ammo efficiency mentality, because I am frugal as I start transitioning to a shotgun mentality. More bang for my buck. The only difference for my shells is that I'll need more plastic in my diet, which isn't too bad. I could donate my water bottles to the cause, or just puke out all the microplastics I've been drinking for the last, 20 years. You can find a lot of those out in the ocean, but nah, our water is stored in cartons, without any missing people's pictures on it. I got my shotgun, some ammo, and upgraded the hell out of it. Yeah, this is a major upgrade on my kit. And if this were the legendary variant that could explode on contact, yeah, the game would be done. But at least now with my build under wraps, maybe now I can start having fun. Just have to sleep for long periods of time to get more building materials. Once I was ready with my ammo supply, I departed to the south of Arkstead to head to Fort Hagen. Like hell, I was going to be dog sitting, taking them to a park to sniff other dog butts. That's for freaks and furries. Both are synonyms, please ignore my profile pic. On my way to the cereal factory, I came across a stunted bear. It is very mentally stunted, as it never once sought cover, or to avoid the barrage of shotgun shells coming its way. I also tried firing off the rockets, but I suck at rocket launches. And the one I was able to launch hit mission control. Who knew spaceflight would prove to be a challenger? As for the fort, the turrets offered to me their inner guts, which I'll happily oblige. And the stints weren't too bad despite having not much in the way of energy protection. Who would have thunk using a CQC-based weapon in a CQC-based environment would be a smart play? It is common sense. No need to sit through 3 boring-ass meetings and a conference call about synergizing your models to one cohesive conclusion. Just point your weapon in a general direction and you get results. Anything to make the assholes making 3 more zeros than me happy, I guess. The basement was a continuation. I did get a Coast Guard hat from one of the trunks. Sorry, the Coast Guard means not Navy, so I tossed that filth aside. Give me a sea captain hat, damn it! Given that the shotgun pairs well with my hyper-aggressive playstyle, I am in my natural habitat, ripping apart the camera crew and chewing on them for lunch. How do you like my fascinating show of dominance now, Discovery? As for Kellogg, I didn't let my rival explain his business model. I just offered my buyout, since I have more money than common sense, and we just started feuding. I tried closing the distance once the bodyguards went down, but I was thrown halfway across the room. I should mention if I get low on health, I just spin my water key and I'm rehydrated so that way the enemies can dihydrate. I bonked Kellogg on the head for being invisible, stole his brain chip, and enjoyed a bit of fan service to start the second half of the game. Running low on ammo, I figured I could hit up Bunker Hill for more supplies. There are a lot of merchants here, so I can take my water empire here for business if I need to. Also, while I was here, I discovered Bunker Hill is also a settlement. Well, looks like I'll need to do a bit of the Institute route. I was wanting to blast my son to take over the family inheritance for myself. After a crafting session, I figure I could finally start rushing settlements. I am really not looking forward to the glowing sea. First up was Hangman's Alley. It was a quick clean out, All I really did was introduce the raiders to the concept of deciding whether or not to hang out with their neck on a tree or French kiss a shotgun. They all took up the latter. I never specified where they would stick their mouths. My next stop was going to be Oberland, and I managed to sneak up on some mutants with my 1 agility and blast them apart. Shotguns are notoriously not weapons for silent assassinations. They're more of a here I am motherfucker sort of gun. As for backstreet apparel, I started my shopping spree, but I realized I am way outside my price range of hyper frugal and with names of people I have no idea who they are. I'm sure my bosses, there are way too many bosses. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I got hurt, so I drank 3 body weights worth of water and I peed into the clothes rack. Take that, lowest button. Once the building was cleared out of its hostiles, I rescued the hostage and took her home to her parents, reminding them that future rescue missions will be a subscription service of $13.99 a month, with features slowly being upgraded to a more premium service, including for your car's acceleration. Someday I really wish that brakes could also be a subscription service. Back in Sanctuary, I recently leveled up my armorer, so I take the time to upgrade my gear to the light combat tier, which will be basically my entire armor kit taken care of for the rest of the run. Before heading out on a spiritual journey of reunification, I spent some time crafting some drugs and other helpful toys to get me through my long pilgrimage. I need to recruit over 30 settlements, and I am at a whopping 6 so far, so I should probably pick up the pace so this video doesn't eclipse my Santa Claus run. On my way to the first outpost, I had an artistic interpretation of imposter syndrome, where an idealized version of the artist holding themselves hostage, representing the perpetual internal conflict of seeking self-satisfaction while feeling inadequate to society's endless cycle of consumption, uncaring to the artist's crumbling home life. The oil canvas is painted with blood to add a resin to the final product, which came from the artist literally pouring his blood onto the piece. Wait, no, that was for my shotgun. My first target was Outpost Simonja, which is probably one of the most annoying locations. My first attempt at sneaking up on the old geezer didn't go too well. So what is the best way to defeat a nuclear-wielding super soldier? If you said get high as walk up to the asshole and beat the ever-loving shit out of him, you would be correct. I'm just surprised my stupid ideas work. I love not having to pay the consequences of my actions. Now high from my hubris, I feel a wave of austerity enveloping my body, drunk with power unfounded, and I started wandering towards the more dangerous portions of the map underleveled. I arrived at Greentop since that was where Preston sent me, and they want me to clear out the f***ing quarry. Okay, we're a couple of weeks past Halloween, thank you very much. On my way to the next locale, I watched 2 Deathclaws settle the dispute diplomatically in court. My shotgun is the judge, and my slugs are the jury. I got a mission from the slug to clear out some super mutants, and I become objectively challenged, uncertain what I should do first. The correct answer is going to the furnace and being roasted alive. Sure, I was set on fire a lot, but remembering my Pokemon, water beats fire, so when threatened, I just chugged water like my life depended on it. F my kidneys. As for Slag, I replaced the A in his name with the U, as in, you are f***. The nice thing about spamming water is that you get a constant health regen, letting me tank the damage just fine. And that's one thing I actually like about healing in Fallout 4, is the regen stacking. Drink enough water or whatnot, you can eventually out-heal any damage you receive, as long as it's not a one-shot. Well, I got my hot sword I cannot craft with, and the Finches are reunited and got a happy conclusion. Honestly, I didn't care if Jake died or not. Well, that's another settlement under my belt, and having consumed so much water, I had to make a pit stop in Sanctuary to reload my dihydrogen monoxide and some ammo. My next stop was a super mutant camp, which really wasn't that difficult. Point in a general direction, and clicked until the mutants were deleted. Sure, the butcher did drain my health pretty quickly, but not as fast as I can heal. Yeah, I really should not be in this region right now, but I don't really care. Well, this log is now ours, and next up is continuing on my way east. Things started out tricky with the legendary Deathclaw, but that is what having nearby meat shields are for. So, the quarry. There are a lot of high-leveled raiders in an open area, and when I am focusing on a short-range build, yeah, these raiders really lay down the hurt. Plus high-level turrets, and there was a reason I was dreading this place. But that is the nice thing about drugs. They can overcome any shortcomings until the withdrawals hit you, then your foobar. At least in the insides, the corridors are a lot more confined, so I am feeling much more confident in my abilities to dispatch any would-be raider coming my way. Oh yeah, Bedlam was put to bed, and I decided, sure, I could have some hallucinogenic flashbacks to Eldritch Horrors, then making an extended lore video explaining the lore behind the Dunwick. Yeah, I just came here to grab the sneak bobblehead and my dental bill. I told the settlers afterwards that their nearby faraway raider problem has been dealt with, and I felt my inner vigilante ascendar nearly got the better of me. And after all my settlement crafting, it is finally time to head to the castle to seek court with the Mirelurk Queen. But I am feeling the urge to continue exploring the northeast. I cleared out the coastal cottage, honestly a forgettable settlement, and not wanting to deal with the rad storm of the children of Adam, I decided to get some loose settlements first. First up was Grey Garden's Mirelurk problems. As a helpful word of advice, don't shoot at someone with a bomb strapped to their arm point blank. You might lose more than your entire body. Just fine from afar. As for the mutant camp otherwise, I have no idea what happened. But everyone died after the chopper went down on top of them. Saves me the headache of having a missile barrage to my forehead. The insides of the water treatment plant weren't nearly as interesting. Just gotta make some crab cakes and lower the water levels. A really simple location, but at least it is pretty fun. I have always liked water levels, but given my mental instability, I think it is more of a symptom than anything. I relayed the good news to the robots and tried to trade with the game show host. Well, another dungeon down, another exhilaration session is staring at falling boxes fall off a conveyor belt. I did think about making a factory setup made of spaghetti belts, but this isn't satisfactory. This is the post-apocalypse, and according to Todd Howard, you're supposed to be always unhappy and having to kill things. Having remembered Covenant is a thing, I started on my adventure there, only to be surprised someone overdosed on a junkie. The only thing adventurous on my way to the gated community was killing a bunch of rodents. The only mousetrap more effective than a snap trap is just shooting in every direction. You'll hit something eventually. Inside the community of paranoid rich snobs, I just fast-tracked the quest by picking some pockets and hacking into the computer nearby just for the quest markers to be updated. I played this quest as a pacifist, and at the end of the bunker, I let the synth fry. I'm not a good person. I'm just an ass who enjoys misery from time to time. Just that 90% of the misery is pointed at myself, because I am a sad and lonely adult who resents his life and the failure I perceive myself, and the pain I induce to myself lets me know I'm still breathing. Wait, this isn't a therapy session. I watch some shock and awe, unlock another settlement I can peddle my waterwares to, starving another third world nation, and Jacob lets me use the workbench for my checklist. Right down the road is another settlement, the Boathouse, which has a nasty case of malaria. I have the antidote because I have money, and I don't believe sharing my wealth, only my war crimes, but since I'm a corporation and not a country, I get away scot-free. My next settlement is Country Crossing, which wants me to clear out the hippie camp of freeloaders all the way across the map. Honestly, thank you for reminding me of this place. The zombies were stoned out of their mind, so I just do a fresh round of stoning, but without weed. I reported my success to the settlement, and that's another community I can neglect. Oh yeah, I had a raider problem in Fest Sanctuary. The only thing I care about are my special interests and revenue sources, so they had to go. Attack my other settlements, and I wouldn't really care. Remembering about the Brotherhood, I returned to the paramilitary force I kinda forgot about, and got on my pimp limo ride only the CEOs and the board of directors can ride. Peasants can ride on bicycles that they can barely afford. On the blimp, I skipped out on the shareholder meeting, and did some easy quests for a bunch of experience. This is as far as I go with the Brotherhood, since now I have access to the Boston airport. And since I am in the neighborhood, I traveled to the Skyrim beach to start that quest, which wants me to clear out some ghouls halfway across the map. These ghouls must have legs. The training yard wasn't too hard, just putting down the protesters and agreeing with my military backup. Well, the glow stick goes down without much effort, and that is another settlement to the cause. Since I have put off Preston's pleas for help for so long, I figure I should probably stop abandoning him. Before then, I did make a pit stop at the combat zone, combating the raiders that dare oppose my mighty boomstick. This action was enough to recruit Ireland to my distribution network, and together we journeyed on to the south. Truth be told, I only recruited Kate to help with the castle defense later on. When I got to the castle, I immediately went on the offense. I mean, we can always turn the crab cakes into new packaged seafood adjacent products. Who gives a f about the health implications? Just pay off the health inspectors. Well, the health inspector came out to play, and despite being in the Queen's court, honestly the process of backing up at a slow pace while shooting in her general direction while guzzling enough water to hydrate an impoverished nation was an extremely effective method of disposing the matriarch. I was in honestly no danger with the fight, and after powering on the oops this video was copyright claim despite the music being public domain, the castle is ours, and I decided to clear out the basement ahead of time. All I had to do was be mindful of the traps, and for Sarge, well, his charge sucked. But again, by continuing to starve people's homelands of water to sell for profits, he was a non-issue. and since I am in the general region, I figured I could finally begin clearing out the southern side of the map. Really underleveled judging by the skulls next to the Mirelurk's names. Levels are more of a suggestion in this game anyways. As for the queen without the backup at the castle, the strategy plays out the same. Point and click while backing up, and I have committed regicide. I powered on the dog whistle for the Mirelurks, and the settlement is mine. At this point, the Radiant Quest side of the Minutemen started to take over. Instead of getting quests to recruit more settlements, it is now making our settlements happy. So that means going around to various vendors with my price fixed waters to get more ammo for my guns. I just love this gameplay loop. Loot, craft, repeat. Once I was happy, I figured I should probably rip out the band-aid and head to the lighthouse with some Radaway. On my way there, I became the first vehicular homicide of 2287. Since I have been collecting bobbleheads like crazy, I did make a pit stop at the cannery to grab the barter bobblehead, guarded by a lockpick. Well, the Soylent Green cannery was shut down, but I could at least get my barter bobblehead and a perk magazine. As a corporation, I do agree with child labor for profits. Just screw these stupid regulations and human rights. At the Lighthouse of Hell, I don't have much for rad resistance, just some weaker Rad-X substitutes, and a handful of Radaway. So I had to play things carefully, just getting blinded by the lights of the gamma guns. I really hate fighting the children of Adam. Well, after growing 13 lumps in my balls, along with a third arm, the settlement is mine, and the biggest roadblock of the run is done. Just need to spend all my caps on removing the lumps that replace my brain. Oh wait, that has always been empty. Never mind. On my way south from the cannery to the manor, I came across a dead body carrying the most important armor piece of the run, the Sea Captain hat. Take that, Coast Guard! I immediately don it, failing the run, but I'm just going to counter-argue. It is part of the brand ensemble, so I will roll with it. At the manor, I had all manner of ghouls pile onto me, of basically every single variety. I had to fail the run yet again to pick a lock to get a key for the upstairs, or I had to deal with a putrid glowing one. Despite the skulls next to their name, it wasn't too bad. After clearing the basement of its squatters, including some legendary ghouls, I take care of the red and green show. Despite being a level 40 enemy and twice my current level, it was a non-issue. Again, levels being suggestions, the battle is won, the manor is mine, and quite quickly the list of remaining settlements is falling rather quickly. I have been neglecting my Valentine for so long he is starting to see other women. I am sorry, I'm a horrible person. I promise I will change at some point in the next 40 years as I continue to be an awful partner. Also, I leveled up again so I can finally craft frag grenades. Honestly, with my shotgun build, I'm having too much fun to diversify my portfolio. I'm a one-trick pony, and if you are very good at that one trick, you can scam people into giving you money. Bonus points if you use an artificial avatar barely skirting the terms of service on nudity, or you sell your feet for money. I then traveled through the brain, watching monkey neurons activate while watching R34 of Grandma Sparkles, and double dosing on sensual jokes was enough for the movie theater to get a 100% approval rating. I knew focusing on NC-17 movies would be good for profits. Back at Sanctuary, I crafted some glowing blood packs to help out with the glowing sea soon enough. Also, I can begin crafting explosives without getting experience. Also at this point, I do a quick round of gathering materials to survive extended periods of sucking on radioactive rods, mostly getting a mole of moles to bite on my ankles. My brain at this point went from gathering settlements to gathering bobbleheads to buff my special stats. And not because I'm special or so my mother tells me. At the wrecked ship, my Swedish heritage proved superiority towards the Norwegians, and it was an honestly pretty easy encounter, and I have another point in agility. That brings it up to 2. And continuing to avoid my responsibilities, I went inside the Poseidon power plant. Honestly, not a smart play. The outside wasn't too bad, just on the inside I had to deal with a legendary glowing Mirelurk, which nearly one-shots me on numerous occasions. I repeatedly had to guzzle the Pacific Ocean's worth of water just to survive. If it weren't for me exploiting the water mechanic, which it might do for future runs to be honest, I probably would have turned into crab cakes. As for the insides of the plant, I had to type in the damn password to be let inside. The lower levels were filled with automated defenses, but I mean, that was what God invented magnets for. Cuddy was cut up real good, and I got another point in endurance for my troubles. I really just turned my brain off at this point, and I'm just focusing on having fun. Having remembered about the whole every settlement requirement which has been the central focus of this run, I paid a visit to the Warwick settlement, which wants me to clear out the nearby mutant camp. And when I got there, I watched bodies explode in a fireworks show. I sure love a good blood fountain going off. The camp was super small, and really I could have just watched from a distance as the gunners and mutants off each other. I become the middleman and butcher everyone here. And while I was in the neighborhood, I also paid a visit to the Murkwater site and killed another queen. I just gave drugs to this child at heart, and the queen's head came off. Mission complete. I have the most remote and pain-in-the-ass settlements recruited nearby a massacre site, and I return to Preston to give the good news that I've recruited another settlement. He rewards me with the satisfaction that I can go ahead and talk to Ronnie. And given I have completed most settlements at this point, save for one, I begin getting a lot of redundant raiding quests. I proceed to protect Oberlin Station and off the gunners, but now I'm going to have to quadruple the insurance costs for arbitrary reasons. Since I have already cleared out the basement of the castle, it just became a waiting game for Ronnie Shaw to show the f up. Ugh, this quest is annoying. After she gets her romping gear, I can begin building artillery, only for the smoke grenades to just blink off the invisible walls. Okay, Todd, I'm not going to argue with your grand plan. Well, the artillery is now online, which I will allow myself to use, only for one moment later on, which includes Hangman's Alley. My next settlement is Jamaica Plains, where in my journey I was caught in a 5-way war. Me, some zombies, gunners, super mutants, and the Brotherhood. And I guess my inner demons too. It was a wonderful party. There were balloons, explosions, and fathers who are really considering the benefits of going shopping for milk and smokes as the children are asked to ride the $20 ride that had skirted the safety violations and the seatbelt broke off mid-ride. At Jamaica, I just fired at the zombies, and I forgot I still had the rain clouds of death equipped, so it was a wonderful explosive time. Since I did craft some frag grenades, I moved away from death by fire to death by shrapnel. Honestly, I don't know which was worse. At the very least, the town was an easy clean out. House when the last of the factories was closed down and moved overseas because my CEO wanted cheaper labor, so that meant another shopping session before my next location. Since I am starting to approach the Kool-Aid Sea, the game is throwing out more death claws my way, and since I have a big boy weapon, the geckos are not of any concern. I arrived at Summer Villa, and the game would not let me recruit them to the cause. This will probably require some gravy for the Thanksgiving feast coming soon enough. I continue my wanderings further to the west and enter the precipice of the glowing sea. I am a pussy who likes dragging their feet for any difficult encounter, and I turn tail to recruit more settlements. And I got lost on my way to the marina, which is like the last settlement that isn't tied to a quest. I had to gather more ingredients for crab cakes, but given I live off of water like some fishy freak out of water, I don't need sustenance. I attempted to talk to my brain on a bad day when thinking about subjecting myself to beating Skyrim as miserably as possible, and Phyllis decides to off me. Well, I took the settlement by force, but at least I have all save for 2 settlements, so we are approaching the climax of this foreplay of actually finishing this run before GTA 6 comes out. And while I was back in Diamond City, there's one more semi-settlement to recruit, and all I had to do was spend a bunch of my hard-earned exploited caps to purchase a house in this dwindling economy and rent out the house at an exorbitant price to milk out the expenses of everyone in town, and repeating the cycle ad nauseum. It's called investing, or being a f***ing face piece of shit asshole sucking. Anyways, I returned to Preston to tell him we have a new cranky manager to oversee the new hires and increase turnover rates, and I began taking a bunch of quests from him just to get the final settlement under my belt. But first, I leveled up and took Gun Nut level 3, so I can now ascend to my final form with the combat shotgun and my armors too. And at this point, the run grinds to a halt as I have to babysit settlements from any hostile missile launching wielding lunatic. I wish I could do a missile launcher run, to be honest. I fit the lunatic part just fine. And Preston just starts sending me to settlement after f***ing settlement, playing defense, just so he can let me recruit Somerville. Also, this whole Radiant system was not planned out because Jacob Orden does not have any voice lines needing help. It's like the Radiant system was created as an afterthought, just to pad out playtime for mindless players for a role-playing experience. At least he sent me to a hospital to clear out the exploding mutants. If you have a weapon whose gimmick is point in a general direction, these guys weren't that tough. He even had to defend Starlight, though the settler's having a time of her life. Same with the Yaogwai guard dog. Eventually, I had enough of this padded faux pas, and I made the executive decision of recruiting Somerville the alternative way. Don't worry, kids. Your father is going out to go grocery shopping. Just look the other way. You weren't supposed to see that. Yeah, go that way to the wind. Grab help. Something. And welcome to the Orpheolus War Crime Internment Camp. Hope you enjoy the chocolate mines. With all the bonus objectives completed, at least what I can get at this point, I figure it is finally time to grow a few brain tumors. Since I cannot use Rad-X, I have to use the glowing blood pack, which works nearly as well, just not as protective as Rad-X. Gotta love this miserable and depressing place, full of radiation and a destroyed environment. You might call it wasteful dumping, I call it deregulating environmental policies, so I can make even more money. and that is what bribing politicians are for. And during my journey through this radioactive muck, the only enemies I really had to deal with were deathclaws. And my word, I dealt with a great deal of them. But if there's anything I have learned, if you are a big target with a shotgun, you're going to get shredded. Also, legendary rad scorpions hurt. After applying death to all the claws, I eventually made it to Virgil's cave, and at this point, I knew I was reaching the denouement, so time to wrap up the story. Green Tech was a beautiful massacre. I had doom on the brain, and that is sprinting towards each unfortunate victim and focusing on making sure their brain splatter became a nice set piece for some environmental storytelling. You can tell the difference between an easy and a hard Green Tech by how fast you're moving from victim to victim. I honestly had my brain turned off for this section, and focusing on my bloodthirsty id. Was not prepared for someone with a complete lack of common sense to charge right down the barrel of a bunker buster. The rest of the building was of non-issue. I'm really glad I have gore disabled, or the elevator ride was about to get very red. As for the courser, I just fired at a random direction after the microwave went invisible. I was totally trying to kill the courser, but what's wrong with a few extra casualties? It's not like their game data will be deleted from the world as soon as they leave the building or anything. So what is better than one Green Tech rampage? If you said another Green Tech rampage, you would be correct. So I began clearing out mass fusion. I am not going down the Institute or the Brotherhood ending, so I won't have to worry about a third dose of chemotherapy to my non-functioning brain. Just another missile-launching lunatic. If I had a nickel for each time I had to climb a giant tower fighting gunners and during the ascent, having to worry about being blasted apart by a missile, I would have to write an entitled Reddit post that Bethesda is reusing assets. The climb was basically the same as Green Tech, but instead of strong-arming the courser, I just had my arm get stronger. I eventually found my way to the Old North Church after getting hopelessly lost. I'm cardinally challenged, so challenged in fact my mascot transformed into a tornado. I tried typing in the password, only for the CAPTCHA to catch up to me. Sorry, this biometric data is intended to be sold to data harvesters for better advertising, thank you very much. Well, I tossed a grenade to light up this party. I said, I tossed a grenade to light up this party. Much better. Well, the railroad went down without too much fuss, and while sure I lose out on ballistic weave, I at least can revel in the satisfaction that I can go ballistic on this annoying faction. With the enemy patent deciphered and a loophole that we can exploit for profit, I returned to my unpaid intern, and now I can get started on constructing the teleporter to the Institute, along with restocking for hopefully the final time. I hopped onto the very shoddily built platform that we don't have to tell OSHA about, and began taking a tour of the corporate headquarters. So this is where all the blood money from our illicit business practices go. I talked to my estranged son after I got too frisky with the blender, then I met the CEO, gaslighting me on the mission of the business, and having me meet the board of directors. Once that boring meeting that could have been its own email instead of flying out to the shady side of Glendale, I can go ahead with doing a couple Institute missions. While I am not going to be going for the Institute ending, I will be needing to do Bunker Hill for the settlement. I am a very short-range character, so I am a little vulnerable in these wide-open areas. Mostly didn't want to get a fat stack of rats thrown my way. I snuck up the wires, and I did mess up the climb, and I was afraid I would get a one-way ticket to the pearly gates. Nah, they just blew themselves up. Thankfully this mission was pretty simple, had to pass up the terrible shotgun. It is terrible so I can't use it, and I factory reset the processor. Can't have these indentured servants think they have free will and the right to live. Back at the Institute, I get my next mission, the battle for Bunker Hill. Sure, I can go in, blast apart some railroad agents, and return some runaways to their proper owners, but a thought came over my mind. These are people too, not some expendable resources. Something snapped in my brain, a realignment towards the fealty of humanity, and I blasted apart the supervisor, just outside of the cameras. I returned to the CIT ruins, and instead of being fired for insubordination, I just left my resignation letter. Yeah, the company is very much not happy with their stock prices plummeting. They can replace the CEO, but the shareholders' perception of company value? Now it's personal. President sent word that they are orchestrating a paramilitary force outside our apartment complex and wants me to hold the ground. But before then, I need to recruit Bunker Hill, so every settlement is under our belt. Just when I got there, everyone was still fighting. Once the dispute was settled, I was able to strong-arm another settlement towards our boycott. Still on terror at everything going on. Don't worry, the whistleblower allegations are only just beginning. I did take the time in sending as many reinforcements as I can out to our little protest, and as soon as I talked to our organizer, all hell broke loose. For the sense. Explosions rang out from afar, helicopters were raining down from the sky, and for the most part, I had to do very little intervening, unless they entered the courtyard properly. I really didn't have to do much on my end, just point and clicked on anyone who got too close for comfort. My range did prove to be an issue, while that and the 10mm pistol fell off hard, thanks to coursers having a hyperinflated health pool, so as a slog. Oh well, what's done is done. The robots ran in terror once they knew they don't get paid enough for this f***ing shitty-ass slave labor with unpaid overtime, and the day is saved. I'll waste no time in getting my flash drive to show the world how many war crimes our company actually partakes in, and dove into the waste disposal unit, dumping polluted water into the clean water to help promote the former company's water bottles. The sewer dive wasn't that bad, but since I didn't want to craft anything else, I ran out of ammo for my 10mm on the turrets at the start, and I just sprinted my way through the sewers. Ammo will be very tight going forward, so I only used it on what I deemed necessary, such as the janitor. The first section wasn't too rough, and before long I'm inside the Institute, relaying in my whistleblower crew. I ignored everything heading down through the robotics and the biotech sector. While I did have to flex my muscles on the wildlife, the big problem though is that since I ignored everything, I am all alone in the central courtyard. I wasn't too concerned. If I was feeling slightly thirsty, I could continue to replace my blood supply with H2O and continuing to give myself kidney failure. The battle wasn't too strenuous, but I did exhaust a huge portion of my ammo supply, which was what I was anticipating. But at least I came out on top. I typed in the password to evacuate everyone, the biomass we were using to add preservatives into the food became sentient, and I had to rush into the reactor. I didn't want to waste any time with combat. I pumped myself full of as much drugs and water as I can handle, rushed through the reactor, planted my charges, and had to backtrack all the way to almost the courtyard to be teleported out. I had to take the child with me because that was a part of the child support clause, teleport out of the Institute, press the funny red button once again to completely bankrupt the company, and letting the cycle of corporate cartels continue on, and I could not beat Fallout 4 with only crafted items. Thanks, Bobby. Well, that was something. Really? With a couple of crafting perks, the game devolved into a casual playthrough, and that is the fault a lot of crafting systems fall into. Once you focus too much on crafting, eventually the process becomes tiring and people find alternatives to subvert the game loop for a much more user-friendly approach. Stim packs are so common, you never need to craft them. I had to keep a tab on the side on how many I craft versus use. Money can be gained super easily to purchase what you need instead of just crafting it. Force something down people's throats long enough, they will resent the character. And that was the trap Fallout 4 fell into. And why a lot of people don't care for the settlements. I mean, sure, it beats Starfield where the outposts you can literally beat the entire game and not know they exist. I do think the story of Fallout 4 is alright, just some iffy segments, especially the Brotherhood, but I like Boston as a location. In fact, exploring the Commonwealth was significantly more enjoyable than Fallout 3 in New Vegas, though that is choked up to just being better hardware. And while sure I prefer playing Oblivion and Skyrim, the view counts tend to agree, I do enjoy playing Fallout 4 from time to time, mostly with the opportunity to choose which ending I want to go for, instead of one static ending. But yeah, I like Fallout 4, and hopefully you enjoy this run. Oh yeah, thoughts on the run. Pressing Garvey, that is all. As for what's to come next, I think it is time to embrace a persona with Jazargo, and then there's Christmas coming soon. And a special thank you to all the YouTube members and patrons who crafts only the highest quality Sea Captain hats. Links to them along with my Discord and socials in the description. Well, if you enjoyed this video, if you did, be sure to drop a like, subscribe for more masochism and any other ways to torture myself, leave them down below. This has been Orpheolus, and I'll see you all in the next one.